This story takes place when I was 14. It was late summer and I was coming home from hanging out at the beach for my best friend Mia's birthday party. When I got off the subway at my stop, I looked at the bus arrival screen. The bus I would normally take home was arriving in an hour. Being a tired 14-year-old girl, I decided to take an alternate bus route home. This was a decision I would later regret. When I get off the bus at the stop, I have about a 10-minute walk to my building. My area at night is pretty quiet, not many cars on the streets. As I'm walking up the street, I hear the sound of an engine nearby. I look over my left shoulder and see a white panel van rolling up the street. I tried to think nothing of it, but when I turn to my street, the van does too. Now I'm unsettled and start walking faster. This van is driving slowly and it never passes me. When I turn up the long driveway to my building, the van once again turns too. Now I'm scared. The driveway to my building has an ice rink on the side of it with bright lights, so I walk beside the rink under the bright lights. There are small town houses on the other side of this driveway. The van catches up to me and stops. So I think maybe this person is lost and is trying to ask for directions. I stop. I stay about 4 feet from the van just in case. I look in the van window to see an older man, starting to bald with black hair and a white t-shirt. I ask if they are lost. They don't respond. Instead, they try to get me into their van. I say no and start walking, but the van continues to drive slowly following me. When a red car begins to drive down the driveway, the van drives all the way to the end of the driveway and waits for the red car to turn out before reversing to be beside me again. The man is still trying to get me into the van. I want to make a mad dash to my building, but I'm worried he will see where I live, so I keep walking. When another car comes down the driveway, the van does what it did before. Drive to the end and wait for the car to leave. This time there is a cab dropping someone off at the townhouses. The cabbie is closing his trunk when he sees me. "Are you okay?" he asks. I tell him how the van has been following me, and every time a car comes, the van drives to the end and waits for it to leave before following me again. The cabbie tells me he will get in his car, drive to the end of the driveway, and sit there for a bit so I have enough time to run to my building. I tell him okay and thank you. The van is back in line with me again. So the cabbie gets in his cab and drives up to the driveway. The van follows. I look and see the two vehicles sitting there. I run up the rest of the driveway into my building's lobby. My heart is racing. When I get to my apartment, I'm still freaked out. I go into my room and call the cops. While I'm on the phone with the cops, I look out my bedroom window and see the van. It's slowly driving around my building looking for me. Now I'm fully panicking. The cops send officers to sweep the area, but they don't find him. 2 officers came to my apartment to get a statement from me. About a week after this happened, the officers come back to my apartment. They show me a photo of the man from the van that they were able to get from the security camera on the side of my building. I told them the man in the photo was the one that followed me. They told me they found him and that he was being put on the sex offender list. I'm 5 feet 7 inches, 113 pounds, and I was 16 at the time of the encounter. I'm a multi-sport athlete: track, handball, volleyball, basketball, and hockey, and I have insomnia. This all happened around 2 a.m. on August 10th of 2019. I had been over to my best friend's place because she had just returned home from a vacation and she had birthday presents for me, hoodies and gummies, if you're curious. I had spent almost an hour there already and wanted to head back home soon because honestly, my town is scary at night. Drug dealers, rapists, and murders, you know the deal. So, I waved goodbye to my best friend and started walking down her street. I guess a party had just let up, because behind me at the end of the road, about 20 or 30 yards from where I was standing, there were a couple of men walking across the crosswalk. They were both pretty tall, I'm guessing between 5 feet 11 inches and 6 feet 3 inches. The two seemed harmless at first when I looked in their direction, but soon they came to a stop. They were both looking at me. At this point, I felt uncomfortable, so I just kept walking. That's when I overheard what one of them said. "Hey, that's a girl." At this, I whipped my head around. They were starting to walk in my direction now, and one of the two men had moved over towards the sidewalk where there was no light. I knew at this point that something wasn't right, and I began to pick up my pace. They were still getting closer. I didn't know where the second guy was, but when I looked back, the first guy was still following me down the middle of the road. I think that they were planning to cut me off and try to trap me between the two of them. The minute I was about 13 yards from the T intersection, I started to run, and that's when the yelling started. Oh great, now she's running. I hooked a sharp right, and then a left. I could still hear them behind me, and at this point all I knew was that I couldn't stop moving. I had to lose them somehow. I was coming up to an apartment building with a small parking lot behind it. There were no lights. I made the split-second decision to veer off into the parking lot, and I squeezed myself under one of the cars. I don't know how long I waited there. It could have been a minute, but it felt like a lifetime. I watched the two men run past. They didn't bother to check under the cars, which was definitely in my favor. The minute I felt that I was safe, I backtracked and took a different route back to my home. I was too scared to take the main route, in the fear I would have bumped into them. I know what I'm about to say is stupid, but I didn't go to the police. I wouldn't have been able to give a proper description of the men because I hadn't seen their faces. This happened to me 2 years ago when I was 18. I need to set up the scenery of my house so that the location makes sense. I live in an upper middle class neighborhood that resides in the middle of a golf course. I live in one of the most remote locations of this neighborhood where we have no access to a main roadway. Furthermore, our house is a 2-story on about 1 acre. On the first floor is a kitchen, bedroom, office, and living room with a couple bathrooms. The second floor is just a couple bedrooms along with bathrooms and a room we use for social gatherings. Along the back of the house we also have a deck with metal and wicker furniture. Now that the setting is out of the way, it was on a rare Saturday that I had gotten off of work and I wanted the day to relax and not go anywhere or do anything. My parents knew I never really got days off, let alone a weekend off, so they were okay with letting me stay home alone when they went out of town for the day. They decided that day they were going out of town to shop at a nearby mall and wouldn't be home until late. Honestly, I don't remember where my brother was. Well, anyways, it was a pretty normal day by myself. A lot of nothingness was accomplished until it got dark. I decided to come out of my room and watch TV in the living room since my new dog wasn't accustomed to stairs yet and would hardly walk up them. So sitting on the couch, I noticed my pup growling and the hair on the back of her neck standing up. For clarification, at this point it's around 11 p.m. and I cannot see outside at all. I try to calm my dog down, but she's getting really hyper. I'm getting anxious now too because something is really upsetting her. So, I walk upstairs and pick up my BB gun I have in my room. I figure if someone is out there, I just have to stand inside with it and they'll think it's real. Well, after coming down with the BB gun, I take a step over the baby gate we have to keep our pup from peeing on the carpet, and I hear a tapping. Someone or something is tapping on the glass window next to where I was sitting and my dog headed behind my legs. I lifted the BB gun up acting like I was going to shoot when I saw through the window a figure jump over and off the deck railing. I quickly called my parents. Yeah, I should have called the police, but I wasn't thinking. Well, around midnight they got home and turned on the deck lights. We instantly noticed that one of our metal chairs were pulled very far out of place and positioned to look inside the house where I was sitting before. We never did call the police about that incident, but when I was coming home from work about a week later, I pulled into the driveway around 10 p.m. where my headlights lit up a person hiding beside a tree. This was a full-grown adult wearing a long black coat in the middle of June. We did eventually call the police about that, but I have an inkling that it was the same guy. So whoever was watching me from the deck that night and lurking behind trees, let's not meet.